What's up guys, Chris here again with another manga chapter review for the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse. And man, this was honestly a really good chapter. Coming off the heels of the finale of the Echo Gorge arc, we begin the seemingly next arc with some rather interesting developments and some vital pieces of information that could create what can actually be the end goal of the series and Arthur himself of what he's planning to do and his grand plan, as well as introducing a new character and even seeing a character that we've seen previously reintroduced into the story in a very interesting passive way. Now, before I get into the actual review, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps, and the more you do so, the more I know that you guys enjoy my 4 Nights of the Apocalypse content, and that it shows that you like me talking about it, and will encourage me to keep making this weekly, as well as possibly even doing theory videos or speculations and discussions on the events of the story, what could possibly happen, and even the characters themselves. Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So, from the end of the Echo Gorge arc, we basically got the reveals of these Chaos Staffs, which the Knights of Camelot currently have, that are imbued with Chaos power, and can in fact manipulate and possibly control and warp other human beings, possibly other creatures. And it's shown that it was created in Camelot, and also we get Nazian joining the group of Donnie, Percival, and Sin towards their journey to Leonis, and their first stop is seemingly going through the town of Sustana, which is coincidentally where this chapter begins. So let's get started with chapter 14, The Lonely Young Lady. So the chapter starts off seemingly in the town of Sustana, where we see a young girl and her father talking to someone else off screen as they are trying to talk about searching for a particular item that is somewhere in Sustana. And we are being shown a bit of this girl's perspective as she stares at her father saying that, he's lying. And then we get the other person there in a shadowy figure saying that by the name of His Majesty the King, they will save the town from the evils of Leonis. And I like this because now we actually get to see that the people of Camelot are seemingly the enemies of Leonis. And Leonis is the enemy of Camelot, and they view Leonis as evil. Most likely because Meliodas is the king of Leonis. Meliodas is a demon, and Elizabeth, the queen, is in fact a goddess. So if they are against the other races and want to eliminate them, it is honestly very believable that they would want to get rid of Leonis since the rulers are not human. But anyway, going back to this girl's point of view, she does not believe a single word coming out of this man's mouth, saying that he does not breathe a word of the truth, and it really unnerves her a lot. As the conversation then goes off to him being like, that the young girl is very lovely, and that she has grown up since last they met, and that he'd love for her to meet his son. As the girl says, who would ever want to meet your son? As we then get the reveal of her name, and we actually get her full design, Anne. As it's shown that she has just been spacing out and not paying attention to this conversation at all, to a certain extent, as the knight, as we see from the silhouette, is saying that she is at a tender age, so do not mind her. As the girl apologizes, the knight comes up and says, "My lady, should you find it, please inform your father. It is an ancient relief." I don't know if this is a translation error, maybe it's relic, but ancient relief, showing a crowd in prayer. As we then get the reveal that this knight is in fact Ironside, and he says that it is a piece of the coffin of eternal darkness. Now, for those of you who have come from the 7 Deadly Sins, and those of you who have not read the 7 Deadly Sins, let me tell you what the Coffin of Eternal Darkness is. Now, this is a slight spoiler, but if you're going into a sequel series for the 7 Deadly Sins, you could expect minor spoilers for what happened in the events of the series. But anyway, basically the Coffin of Eternal Darkness is an ancient relic created by the goddess race, as well as the other 4 races, imbued with goddess magic to seal away the demon race at the end of the 3,000-year Holy War. And this was 3,000 years ago. In the events of the Seven Deadly Sins, after the events of what would be known as the first season, but at the end of the arc of Leonis, the seal itself was broken and it released the demon race and the 10 Commandments, thus leading into the events of the Seven Deadly Sins right after Season 1, going into Season 2, and eventually leading up into its finale. It's basically one of the most important artifacts in the Seven Deadly Sins because it basically caused all the major conflicts from the series right after the first season. Without it, then things would seemingly be peaceful for the rest of the time. There wouldn't have been really any real conflict. The demons would have been sealed away for I don't know how many years. Possibly for eternity. So it's nice to see such an important artifact from the original series come back into the sequel series, and it seemingly plays a very massive role as Ironside himself is coming to try and find the pieces of the coffin of eternal darkness. So this could lead into a few things on what Arthur's end goal could be, since it involves the coffin of eternal darkness. So this is a concrete object that we can use to figure out what Arthur is possibly planning. But more of that at the end of the video. After this huge reveal, we get to jump back to Percival's group as Donnie is using his seemingly gravity manipulation powers to catch fish. As he's trying to show off, on the side, Percival is honestly trying to train his little magic golems by trying to give them simple commands. But they're obviously not doing anything, either wrestling among themselves or lazing about or staring up into the sky. As Sin tries to explain to Percival that magic's derived from his disposition and emotional state. Percival does not know what that means, as Sin tries to reaffirm that. As then Nazian off-screen says that he's made a grand discovery, that after feeding poison to one of the mini Percival golems, its color changed. And I like that we're getting some little fun dynamics between these characters. Nazian's so obsessed with poisons that he's testing it out on Percival's magic golems, while Percival's trying to train himself to actually control these magic golems right off the bat. So I like that Percival doesn't have complete control over his magical power, despite last arc showing him using it in a pretty good way. Something like the magic golems probably requires a lot of focus and a lot of mental power in order to fully control all of them. And it's very possible that he needs like a common goal in mind when he releases them. So that would make perfect sense. As Sin brings up the fight against Tusker in Echo Gorge, Donnie shows up, gives them the fish, and, a little comedy ensues. Nazian says that this fish is incredibly difficult to remove the bones from, and I like that we're getting some little dynamics between Nazian and Donnie, showing that they don't 100% get along. But then Percival pulls out a knife, says Ouroboros, and it basically triples, and it becomes 10 times its size. And it is basically the sword that we saw in the very first chapter that Percival's grandfather used. Honestly, I was wondering what happened to that, because I don't know if Percival was possibly able to use it, or it was just too big and Percival just left it at his house on God's finger. But anyway, Percival then slices and dices the fish perfectly, and then he cooks the food, much to the impression of Nazian and Donnie, saying that this is basically masterful carving skills and masterful cooking skills. After they eat, they all start to relax as Sin brings up the fact that what Percival has is a first-rate sword. Percival just says it's a carving knight, but again, Sin says that it's clearly just a magic sword. And this actually explains why Percival has not used this sword after leaving God's finger. He just thought it was a magic kitchen knife. So it makes sense why he would never use it as a weapon. So now Percival basically has a weapon to use now that he knows that it's a magic sword. But I am curious of how this sword was made. Possibly it was made by Merlin. And Ouroboros it's an interesting name for a sword. But I'd have to look into that for possible repercussions or what this could symbolically mean, because you can't just name a sword a particular name in a series and think of it as just a cool name. It has to mean something, especially in the greater context of the story. So as we're talking about the magic sword, Percival thinks it's a magic knife, Nazian brings up that Percival said that the helm and the cape were mementos of his grandfather, as he asks, who was he? Percival just says that he was a holy knight like his father, and that that's another reason why he needs to find Ironside and Camelot really quickly. As this is brought up, Nazim himself really does state that it's very hard to believe. He has his doubts because Camelot fell 16 years ago, again, during the end of the Holy War against the Demon King. And despite it being both still around and accessible from the Kingdom of Leonis, he's questioning what Sin said, and Percival just straight up says that he believes Sin. He can tell. Then Donnie brings up the Ringmaster and Elva from the circus troupe that they were in, saying that they basically just up and disappeared right when Pelgard tried to attack them. They explain how Donnie saved Percival from the Holy Knight, and then Sin used one of the spell beads that he had on him to teleport them away at the very last second, and now since Donnie was helping Percival, he is a target of the Holy Knights as well. As then they both come to the realization that they could just use one of the spell beads to go straight to Leonis without having to walk all the way there. But Sin just says he's out of them. He basically wasted the last of them to save Percival and Donnie, and even when they bring up why he did not bring him straight to Leonis, and that's something that was in the back of my mind. If he was going to bring Percival straight to Leonis, then why didn't he just do that from the first place? Percival just reveals that he was in a rush and he wasn't really thinking about it, and that he didn't really pick up the spell bead. He didn't own the spell bead, he just managed to pick it up. Nazim then brings up, could this possibly be a spell bead? As he then goes on to explain that these are magic items, each with their own particular magic within them, said to be made by the great mage Merlin, one of the 7 deadly sins. So Merlin was one of the first of the 7 deadly sins to actually get name dropped in this series right now, so I'm calling it right now. She's going to be the first one of the sins that the characters meet. I'm literally calling it right now. Because by the laws of almost any kind of story, if you name drop a specific character, sooner or later they are going to be introduced in the story. That's a given at this point. If she's the first sin that they actually meet, that will actually be very interesting, honestly. Because they would honestly get destroyed. And I like how Nazim's like really excited about learning about this, and actually says that she has a book of like a lot of poison from around the world, thus getting him excited and biting his own lips to the point where they're like dripping with blood again. So, and since they have no real way to get to Sustana from there, they basically just start walking until they finally reach the town. And I have to say, the artwork has been getting a lot better, and I like that this is such a small town, yet with the overview shot, it honestly looks pretty damn big. But just when they reach the town, one of Percival's golems starts saying here, and then they all leap off him, and then they start going in a particular direction, with the group following. And then they reach a tree where something seems to be buried there, with Sin basically saying that his ability also has some kind of tracker skill too, which is interesting. So once again saying that there was actually like a meme on the 7 Deadly Sins Reddit where Percival's power, the hero type, is basically like a Swiss Army knife. So he has the jack of all trades ability, which is honestly pretty fun to explore. I said it in my last video, but I like a character that has some sort of situational ability, or like a utility belt type of power where they could just adapt to any situation. So if he needs to find something, his power could actually like go straight and look for it. But as they're digging it up, we see Anne running towards them in shock, seeing that they're digging it up, and then we see that what they dug up was actually one of the pieces of the coffin of eternal darkness, which was mentioned previously in the chapter. And I know I just said this, but I like that this old item from the previous series is actually having some major relevance in the sequel series, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. So they all see this. Donnie says that this is probably some sort of valuable treasure. Nazim says that it's pretty old. Sin instantly knows what it is, but then Anne shows up and asks who they are and to put it down right now. And that if they're handing it over to that man, which honestly she's referring to Ironside, then she's going to have to kill all of them, ending the chapter. So honestly, a pretty informative chapter and really good at giving us what we might expect from Arthur's end goal. What I mean by this is something that I honestly thought of back when we were reaching the end of the Echo Gorge arc, where the Knights of Camelot had some sort of ideology where they don't want any of their citizens to be affiliated with any of the other races. No giants, no fairies, demons, goddesses, etc. So this could honestly play into what the beginning of the Seven Deadly Sins was like, saying how human and non-human worlds are going to get divided at some point. So it's very possible that this is Arthur's main plan. Get the Coffin of Eternal Darkness together, use it to seal away all the other races in the world, so it's only just the humans. And I have to say, that could honestly really work, because remember, the Coffin of Eternal Darkness was used to seal away the demon race for like 3,000 years in the Seven Deadly Sins. So this makes it the most important artifact in the entire series, and it was the most important artifact when we got fully introduced to it at the beginning of the Seven Deadly Sins. I originally thought that it was going to be like through chaos power that this was going to happen, like Arthur gets enough power and he'll separate the world. But with the Coffin of Eternal Darkness, and if he uses his chaos power to fuel that seal, then every race on the planet will just be sealed away aside from the humans. So this gets me very curious to see how things will end up, and if Anne actually knows what Arthur is planning, or if it's some sort of gut feeling. I'm going with the fact that Arthur's going to seal away every other race, purely because of, you know, the people of Camelot not liking all the other nations, as well as the fact that Leonis, which was basically the biggest ally to Camelot 16 years ago, is now considered evil and their enemy, most likely because Meliodas and Elizabeth are the rulers, and they are not human. So this brings up a lot of things. And with the mention of Merlin, it's very possible that she will show up at some point, and I just can't wait to see her again, because I would like to see her interactions with the main cast. And if we manage to get to Leonis, I want to see how Meliodas is going to be dealing with all this. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the chapter. Pretty decent theory has been more or less confirmed and created from this chapter. We might possibly get the first sin within the next couple of chapters, since Merlin was name dropped. If it's not her, then my money's on Gother, since at the end of the Seven Deadly Sins he was said to be traveling across Britannia. But yeah, if not those two, then it's definitely going to be Meliodas, since he's the king of Leonis right now. But yeah, all in all, great chapter. What did you guys think? Was it good? Was it bad? What do you think of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness being brought back into the story? And what do you think Arthur's main goal is by trying to find all the pieces of this artifact? Leave it down in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for updates on future videos. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.